The massive warship Dominion's Edge floated silently in the cold darkness of space. Inside its war room, 12 of the galaxy's most feared military leaders sat around a glowing table. Their faces showed worry and anger. For 6 months, one human ship had made fools of them all. Admiral Krex stood at the head of the table. His dark blue skin looked almost black in the red light of the room. 3 scars ran across his face from old battles. He had won wars against entire star systems. But today he looked tired. "Show them the reports," Krex said to his aide. The holographic display came to life. Images of destroyed bases filled the air above the table. Burning space stations, wrecked supply ships, dead soldiers floating in the void. Base 17, gone. Base 23, gone. Supply Depot Kappa, gone. Krex's voice was flat. All destroyed by one human ship, the Defiant Star. General Thax slammed his fist on the table. "How is this possible? It's just one small ship." "Against our entire fleet, because they fight like demons," said Commander Vex. She was the youngest officer in the room, but she had faced the humans in battle. "They don't follow any rules. When we expect them to run, they attack. When we set traps, they spring them on us instead." Krex nodded. "I've studied their combat records. In every battle, they were outnumbered. In every battle, they should have died. But they keep winning." The room fell silent. Outside the windows, stars twinkled like tiny diamonds. Each star system represented worlds under Vorthan rule. But lately, their empire felt smaller. One human ship had changed everything. "What do we know about their crew?" asked General Thax. Krex touched a control. New images appeared. 127 humans, led by Captain Blake. Their ship is old, but they keep upgrading it with stolen technology. They've taken weapons from 6 different alien races and somehow made them all work together. "Impossible," muttered Admiral Zork. "Different alien technologies don't mix. The power systems alone would explode." "Yet they've done it," Krex replied. "More importantly, they never leave anyone behind. If they receive a distress call, they always respond. Always. Even if it means walking into obvious danger." "Commander." Vex leaned forward. "You have an idea." Krex smiled for the first time in weeks. "I do. We've been trying to fight them ship to ship. We've been using conventional warfare against an enemy that doesn't understand the word conventional. It's time we tried something different." He touched another control. A star map appeared, showing a small system at the edge of known space. The planets glowed red, marking them as extremely dangerous. "The Telos system," Krex announced. 7 planets, all of them death worlds. The 3rd planet, Telos 7, is the worst of them all. General Thax studied the display. "I know this place. We lost a research team there 5 years ago. The planet killed them in 3 days." "Exactly," said Krex. "Telos 7 has everything that kills. Toxic air that melts metal. Gravity storms that change every few hours. Predators that hunt in packs and can smell fear from miles away. The ground itself is acidic. Even our best environmental suits last only hours there." "So how does this help us?" asked Admiral Zork. Krex's smile grew wider. "The planet also has something else. Ancient technology. Orbital defense systems left behind by a dead civilization. The systems still work, but they've been dormant for thousands of years." He highlighted several points around the planet. "These defense stations can create an energy barrier around the entire world. Nothing gets in or out once it's activated. The original builders used it to protect their world during wars. Now we'll use it as a prison." Commander Vex understood first. "A trap." "The perfect trap," Krex confirmed. "We send out a fake distress signal. A civilian transport lost and dying. The humans will have to respond. It's what they do. We lead them to Telos 7, then activate the ancient defense grid. They'll be trapped on the surface with no way to escape." "But how do we activate the defense system?" asked General Thax. Krex pulled up technical data. "Our scientists have been studying the ruins for years. We found the control codes 3 months ago. The system responds to specific energy frequencies. We can trigger it from orbit. Admiral, Zork still looked doubtful. What if they escape before we can trap them? They won't, said Krex. The signal will come from the planet's surface. They'll have to land to investigate. Once they're down there, we activate the grid. Even if they try to leave immediately, their ship won't be fast enough. The room buzzed with quiet conversation. The plan was simple but clever. Use the humans' greatest strength against them, their need to help others. Commander Vex raised a concern. What about the planet itself? You said it kills everything. That's the beauty of it, Krex replied. We don't have to fire a single shot. We don't risk any of our ships. We don't lose any soldiers. The planet will do our job for us. In a few days, maybe a week, the humans will be dead. Problem solved. General Thax nodded slowly. It could work, but we need to make the distress signal believable. Already handled, said Commander Vex. I have a team that specializes in fake transmissions. We'll create a perfect civilian transport ID, complete with passenger manifests, cargo records, everything. Krex looked around the table. Are we all agreed? This ends the human problem once and for all. One by one, the officers nodded. They had tried everything else. Direct attacks had failed. Ambushes had backfired. Even sending their best pilots and newest ships had resulted in humiliating defeats. Prepare the fake transport, Krex ordered. Position our fastest ships along likely approach routes. When the humans take the bait, we guide them exactly where we want them to go. As the meeting ended, the officers filed out of the war room. Only Krex remained, staring at the image of Telos 7. The planet looked beautiful from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It looked like a paradise. He knew better. Telos 7 was a killer. Soon it would kill the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. Krex touched his communication device. Signal the fleet. Operation Death Trap begins in 6 hours. Outside his window, the stars continued to twinkle. Soon those same stars would witness the end of humanity's most successful ship. The war would return to normal. The Vorthan Empire would continue its expansion across the galaxy. At least that was the plan. The bridge of the Defiant Star hummed with quiet activity. Captain Ross Blake sat in his command chair, watching the stars streak past through the main view screen. His ship was heading toward their next target, a Vorthan supply depot that had been causing trouble for human colonies. Blake was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had been fighting aliens for 15 years. His crew trusted him completely, and he trusted them. Together, they had turned an old cargo ship into the most feared vessel in this part of the galaxy. Captain, called out Communications Officer Jake Rivers from his station. I'm picking up a distress signal. Blake turned toward him. What kind of signal? Civilian transport. They're calling themselves the Peaceful Dawn. Says they're carrying refugees from the Kepler colony evacuation. Jake's fingers danced over his controls. They sound desperate, sir. Chief Engineer Kate Walsh looked up from her repair work. She was a small woman with dirty hands and a sharp mind. Captain, that signal is coming from the Telos system. That's bad news territory. Blake knew the reputation of the Telos system. Every spacer in the galaxy had heard stories about those death worlds. Ships went in and never came out. But civilians were in trouble. How many people on board? Blake asked. 237 souls, sir, Jake replied. Mostly families. They say their life support is failing. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The Telos system was dangerous, but they couldn't ignore people who needed help. It wasn't the human way. Dr. Emma Torres spoke up. From the science station, she was the ship's doctor and xenobiologist. Captain, I've been studying the Telos system. The third planet is particularly nasty. Toxic atmosphere, predatory wildlife, unstable gravity. It's killed every research team that's tried to land there. But it's also perfect for hiding, added Navigator Tom Nash. If someone wanted to avoid Vorthan patrols, Telos 7 would be the place to go. Blake made his decision. Jake, respond to their signal. Tell them we're coming. Sir, Kate said carefully. This could be a trap. Blake nodded. It probably is, but what if it isn't? What if there really are families dying out there? The crew exchanged glances. They had all been in situations like this before. The smart thing would be to ignore the signal and continue their mission. But none of them could live with themselves if they let civilians die. "Aria," Blake called to the ship's AI. "Plot a course for the Telos system. Best speed." The artificial intelligence responded in her calm, female voice. "Course laid in, Captain. Estimated arrival time, 4 hours, 17 minutes. As the Defiant Star changed direction, Blake felt the familiar weight of command. Every decision could mean life or death for his crew. But some decisions were easier than others. Helping people in trouble was always the right choice. 3 hours later, they arrived at the edge of the Telos system. The star was old and red, casting an eerie light on the 7 planets that orbited it. Each world looked deadly in its own way. "Scanning for the transport," Jake announced. "Got them. They're in orbit around Telos 7, but barely. Their orbit is decaying." "Any sign of Vorthan ships?" Blake asked. Tom checked his sensors. "Nothing on long-range scan, but this system has a lot of interference. They could be hiding anywhere." Aria's voice filled the bridge. "Captain, I am detecting massive energy signatures buried in the planet's crust. The readings are consistent with ancient defensive technology." Blake felt a chill. "Defensive technology? Unknown origin," Aria continued. "The systems appear to be dormant, but they are still functional. I recommend extreme caution." Before Blake could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The lights flickered and the deck vibrated under their feet. "What's happening?" Blake demanded. Tom's hands flew over his controls. "Energy barrier forming around the planet. It's coming from multiple points on the surface." "Full reverse," Blake ordered. "Get us out of here." But it was too late. A shimmering wall of energy surrounded Telos 7, trapping everything in orbit. The Defiant Star hit the barrier and bounced, back like a ball hitting a wall. "We're trapped," Kate announced. "The barrier is too strong. Our weapons can't break through." Blake gritted his teeth. "The transport, scan for it." Jake worked frantically. "I'm not reading any transport, sir. The signal is coming from a probe on the planet's surface. It's fake." The bridge crew realized the truth at the same moment. They had been tricked. The distress signal was bait and they had taken it. "Incoming transmission," Jake reported. "It's Admiral Krex of the Vorthan fleet." Blake nodded grimly. "Put him on screen." The image of Admiral Krex appeared on the view screen. The alien's scarred face showed satisfaction and cruel amusement. "Captain Blake," Krex said smoothly. "Welcome to your tomb." "Krex," Blake replied calmly. "I should have known you were behind this." "You humans are so predictable," the Admiral continued. "You simply cannot resist helping others even when it's obviously a trap. Your compassion is your greatest weakness." Blake smiled coldly. "We'll see about that." "The energy barrier around the planet is impenetrable," Krex explained. "Your ship will be pulled down by the planet's gravity within hours. Even if you survive, the crash Telos 7 will kill you. The air is poison, the ground is acid. The animals hunt in packs. You have perhaps 3 days before you all die horribly." "And you'll just watch from up there?" Blake asked. "Exactly. I don't need to risk my ships or my soldiers. The planet will do my work for me. Your reign of terror ends here, Captain." The transmission ended. Blake stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. "Well," Blake said finally, "we've been in worse situations." Kate laughed despite their circumstances. "When? Remember the Proxima incident? We were outnumbered 50-1. That was different," Tom pointed out. "We had space to maneuver." "Now we have a whole planet," Blake replied. "Kate, how long before we're pulled down?" 2 hours, maybe 3, she answered. "The barrier is interfering with our engines." Blake stood up. "Then we better get ready for a crash landing. Emma, start preparing medical supplies. Tom, find us the best landing spot you can. Kate, secure the engine room. Jake, try to raise any other ships that might be trapped here." As his crew rushed to follow orders, Blake looked out at the planet below. Telos 7 looked beautiful from space, but he knew it was a killer. The Vorthans expected it to destroy them. Blake had other plans. He had been underestimated before. It never ended well for his enemies. The Defiant Star began its final descent toward the surface of the Deathworld. The Defiant Star crashed into the surface of Telos 7 with tremendous force. The ship plowed through purple trees and strange rocks before coming to rest in a shallow valley. Steam rose from the hull as the toxic rain began eating at the metal. "Captain." Blake pulled himself up from the floor of the bridge. His head was bleeding, but he was alive. Around him, his crew was doing the same thing, checking for injuries and damage. "Report," Blake called out. Kate's voice came through the communication system. "Engine room is flooded with some kind of acid vapor. Main power is down to 40%. We're breathing recycled air, but the filters won't last long in this atmosphere. Hull, breach on deck 3, added Tom. The local air is seeping in. It smells like rotten eggs mixed with burning metal." Blake looked at the main screen. Outside, they could see the alien landscape of Telos 7. The sky was a sickly yellow color. Strange plants moved without any wind. In the distance, something howled, a sound that made everyone's skin crawl. "Aria," Blake said to the ship's AI, "give me a full environmental analysis." "Atmospheric composition is 70% methane, 20% sulfur compounds, 10% various toxins," Aria reported. "Ground acidity level is extreme. Local gravity varies between 0.8 and 1.4, Earth standard, changing every 6 to 8 hours. Temperature ranges from -20 to +60 Celsius. Dr. Emma Torres shook her head. "We can't survive outside for more than a few minutes without full environmental suits." "How many suits do we have?" Blake asked. "Enough for 30 people," Kate replied, "for maybe 6 hours each before the acid eats through them." Blake did the math. 127 crew members, 30 suits, it wasn't nearly enough. "Sir," Jake called from his station, "I'm picking up other ships on the scanner. Looks like we're not the first ones to get trapped here." Blake studied the readings. "How many?" "At least 12 different wrecks scattered around this area. Some look old, some look recent. None of them are transmitting any life signs." Blake made a decision. "We're going outside. Small teams, full protection, quick searches. Those wrecks might have supplies we can use." Dr. Torres looked worried. "Captain, the environment will kill us." "Only if we let it," Blake replied. "Emma, I want you to study samples of everything: air, water, plants, soil. Find out what makes this place tick. Kate, start working on extending our life support. Tom and Jake, you're with me. We're going wreck hunting." An hour later, Blake and his team stepped outside the ship. The environmental suits were bulky and awkward, but they kept the deadly atmosphere at bay. The ground under their feet was soft and squishy, like walking on wet leather. "Stay close," Blake ordered through the suit radio. "Watch for movement. According to the reports, this place has predators." They walked toward the nearest wreck, a Vorthan scout ship that had crashed maybe a year ago. The hull was partially dissolved by acid rain, but parts of it were still intact. "Look at this," Tom said, pointing to claw marks on the ship's hull. "Something big tried to get inside." They entered through a hole in the side. Inside, they found the remains of the Vorthan crew, but they also found something valuable: spare parts, tools, and most importantly, different types of environmental suits. "These Vorthan suits are designed for different atmospheres," Kate observed. "If we can modify them, we might be able to stay outside longer." As they searched, Jake made an interesting discovery. "Captain, look at this data pad. It's a Vorthan research log. They were studying the local plants before they died." Blake read over the alien text. "Aria, can you translate this?" The AI's voice came through their suit radios. "The log indicates that several local plant species produce compounds that neutralize atmospheric toxins. The Vorthans were attempting to create breathing filters using these plants." "So there's a way to breathe the air safely?" Emma asked from back at the ship. "Possibly," Aria confirmed, "but the Vorthans died before completing their research." Blake smiled inside his helmet. "Then we'll finish what they started. Emma, I'm sending you samples of everything we find. Tom, start collecting these plants. Kate, Grab any technology that looks useful. They spent 4 hours exploring wrecks and collecting samples. By the time they returned to the ship, they had gathered materials from 6 different alien species. Each wreck told a story of ships that had been trapped and died. But Blake noticed something else. The newer wrecks were in better condition. The older ones were almost completely dissolved. "Area," he said once they were back inside. "Analyze the decay rates of these wrecks." "Interesting," the AI responded after a few minutes. "The older wrecks show signs of being broken down by biological processes, not just chemical ones. Something is actively recycling the metal." Dr. Torres looked up from her samples. "Captain, I think I know what. These soil samples contain microorganisms that eat metal. But they also produce something interesting, a compound that could strengthen our hull against the acid." Blake felt a spark of hope. "Keep working on it. What about the breathing problem?" "The plants Jake collected do produce neutralizing compounds," Emma continued. "If I can extract and concentrate them, we might be able to create breathable air, filters. It won't be pleasant, but it could keep us alive." Kate had been working on the Vorthan technology. "Captain, their environmental suits use a different power system. If I can adapt it to our equipment, we could extend our outside time from 6 hours to maybe 24 hours. Blake gathered his senior officers around the small table in his quarters. Outside, something screamed in the distance, a sound like metal being torn apart. "Here's the situation," Blake began. "The Vorthans expect us to die. They're probably watching from orbit, waiting for our life signs to disappear. What they don't expect is for us to adapt." "Adapt?" Tom asked. "Captain, this place is designed to kill everything." "No," Blake replied. "This place is designed to kill everything that doesn't belong here. But what if we make ourselves belong?" Emma understood first. "You want us to change our biology to survive here." "Not change," Blake corrected. "Improve. Emma, those microorganisms you found, can they be beneficial instead of harmful?" "Maybe," she said slowly. "If we can control them, they might help us process the toxic air. But it would be dangerous. We'd essentially be infecting ourselves." "Kate," Blake continued, "those plant compounds, can we use them to create permanent air filtration systems?" "I think so. The ship's air recyclers could be modified. We'd have clean air as long as we had plants to process." Blake looked at each of them. "The Vorthans gave us a death world. Let's turn it into our home." Jake spoke up. "Captain, I managed to boost our communications array. We can reach the Vorthan fleet if you want to send a message." Blake grinned. "Patch me through to Admiral Krex." A few minutes later, the alien admiral's face appeared on the screen. He looked surprised to see Blake alive. "Captain Blake," Krex said. "Still breathing, I see. Enjoy it while you can. You have perhaps 2 days left." "Actually, Admiral, I wanted to thank you," Blake replied cheerfully. Krex's expression changed to confusion. "Thank me?" "For the training exercise. This planet is teaching us things we never knew about survival. It's quite educational." "You're insane," Krex said. "The planet is killing you." "The planet is challenging us," Blake corrected. "There's a difference. By the way, if you have any more challenging environments, we'd be happy to test ourselves against them." Krex's face showed anger and disbelief. "You cannot survive there." "We'll see," Blake said calmly. "Blake out." The transmission ended. Tom stared at his captain. "Sir, was that wise? Now he knows we're planning something." Blake shrugged. "Let him know. Confidence is a weapon too. Besides, we have work to do." As night fell on Telos 7, the human crew worked frantically. They had 72 hours to prove that humanity could survive anywhere. The clock was ticking, but Blake had faith in his people. They had never let him down before. 3 weeks had passed since the Defiant Star crashed on Telos 7. Admiral Krex sat in his command chair aboard the Dominion's edge, staring at the sensor readings with growing confusion. "This can't be right," he muttered to Commander Vex. "Check. The sensors again. Vex ran the scan for the third time. The readings are accurate, sir. The human ship is showing full power. More than full power, actually. They're generating 50% more energy than when they first arrived. Impossible, Krex said. The planet should have killed them by now. What about life signs? That's the strange part, Vex replied. I'm reading more life signs now than before. A lot more. Krex stood up. How many more? When they crashed, there were 127 humans. Now I'm reading over 200 life forms around their crash site. Admiral Zork, who had been listening, shook his head. The sensors must be damaged. Nothing survives on Tilo 7 for more than a few days. Send down a probe, Krex ordered. I want to see what's happening. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Captain Blake was standing outside the Defiant Star without an environmental suit. He was breathing the toxic air as if it were normal. Around him, his crew worked on various projects, all of them breathing freely. Dr. Emma Torres had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The plant compounds she had discovered didn't just neutralize toxins, they actually made humans stronger. The crew had spent 2 weeks gradually adapting their biology, and now they could survive in conditions that would kill most alien species. Captain, called Kate from the top of a new structure they were building. The power collectors are working perfectly. We're pulling energy directly from the lightning storms. Blake looked up at the massive metal framework rising above their camp. Kate had designed it to capture the electrical energy from Telos 7's frequent storms. Each lightning strike powered their growing settlement for hours. How's the mining operation going? Blake asked Tom, who was covered in dirt and grinning. Better than expected, Tom replied. The acid that dissolves most metals actually purifies the rare elements we need. We're extracting materials that would cost millions of credits anywhere else. Blake walked through their expanding settlement. What had started as a simple crash site was now a thriving community. They had built workshops, living quarters, and laboratories. Gardens of local plants provided both food and air purification. But the most amazing change was in the people themselves. The human crew wasn't just surviving, they were thriving. The harsh environment had made them stronger, faster, and more resilient. Blake, called a voice from the edge of the settlement. It was Maria Santos, a pilot from a crashed merchant ship they had found 3 days earlier. She was one of 17 survivors they had rescued from various wrecks around the planet. What is it, Maria? Blake asked. The big predators are back, but they're not attacking. They're just watching. Blake followed her to the perimeter. Sure enough, a pack of 6-legged creatures with silver fur stood at the edge of the clearing. These were the apex predators of Telos 7, deadly hunters that could tear apart a shuttle with their claws. But they weren't acting aggressive. They seemed almost curious. Dr. Torres joined Blake at the fence. I think they're learning, she said. We've been here long enough that they recognize us as part of the ecosystem now. Part of the ecosystem? Blake asked. Think about it, Emma explained. We're not trying to fight the planet anymore. We're working with it. We use its storms for power, its plants for air, its acid for mining. The local wildlife is starting to see us as beneficial rather than threatening. Jake came running from the communications center. Captain, the Vorthan probe is coming down. It'll be here in 10 minutes. Blake smiled. Perfect timing. Everyone, prepare for visitors. As the Vorthan probe descended through the toxic clouds, its cameras recorded everything. The images it sent back to the fleet above showed something impossible. Where there should have been wreckage and death, there was a bustling settlement. Humans worked alongside survivors from a dozen different species. The toxic storms that should have destroyed everything were being harvested for energy. The acid rain that dissolved metal was being collected and used for industrial processes. Most shocking of all, the humans were thriving. They moved freely in the poisonous atmosphere. They had built structures that withstood the planet's violent weather. They had turned the deadliest world in known space into a home. This is impossible, Admiral Krex whispered as he watched the feed. Commander Vex was equally stunned. Sir, they're not just surviving, they're building something. Look at those energy readings. The probe's sensors showed massive construction projects underway. The humans were building some kind of industrial complex using technology scavenged from crashed ships and materials mined from the planet itself. What are they building? Krex demanded. His science officer studied the readings. It appears to be everything, sir. Manufacturing facilities, research laboratories, defensive structures. They're creating a permanent base. On the surface, Blake watched the probe hovering overhead. He activated his communicator. Admiral Krex, this is Captain Blake. Thanks for sending the probe. Would you like a guided tour? Krex's voice came through, filled with disbelief. How are you alive? We're not just alive, Blake replied cheerfully. We're better than ever. This planet has been very educational. We've learned so much about survival, adaptation, and resource management. You can't survive there indefinitely, Krex insisted. The planet will kill you eventually. Blake laughed. Admiral, the planet isn't trying to kill us anymore. We're part of it now. In fact, we've made some friends. As if on cue, one of the silver-furred predators walked calmly through the settlement. The humans barely glanced at it. The creature had learned that these strange beings were not prey but partners in the planet's ecosystem. Impossible, Krex breathed. Would you like to meet some of our other residents? Blake continued. We've rescued survivors from 12 different species. Turns out, when you work together and adapt to the environment instead of fighting it, amazing things happen. The probe's cameras showed the truth. Aliens who had been enemies for generations were working side by side with humans. A Vorthan engineer was teaching a human how to repair energy conduits. A Zilonian scientist was helping Dr. Torres study local plant life. Former slaves and former masters were building a new society together. By the way, Blake added, we wanted to ask about those orbital defense platforms, the ones you used to trap us here. We've figured out how to control them. Krex felt his blood turn cold. What? The ancient civilization that built them left quite a bit of information in their ruins. We've been studying their technology. Very advanced stuff. We should be able to take full control of the defense grid within a few days. The Admiral realized what this meant. The humans hadn't just survived his trap. They had turned it into the foundation of a fortress. The same barriers that imprisoned them would soon protect them. You're bluffing, Krex said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Blake asked. Arya, show Admiral Krex what we found in the temple complex yesterday. The probe's feed switched to show massive underground ruins. Ancient technology hummed with power. Human engineers worked alongside alien specialists to understand systems that were older than the Vorthan Empire itself. This technology predates anything in our databases, Blake explained. The beings who built it were incredibly advanced. They didn't just create weapons, they created tools for building civilizations. And now we understand how to use them. Krexy stared at the images in growing horror. The humans had done the impossible. They had taken his perfect trap and turned it into their greatest advantage. We'll be in touch soon, Admiral, Blake said. We have some interesting proposals to discuss with you. The communication ended. Commander Vex looked at her superior. Sir, what do we do? Krex stared at the planet below. 3 weeks ago he had been confident of victory. Now he was looking at a potential disaster that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Send a message to Imperial Command, he said quietly. Tell them we have a problem. Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, reading the message from Imperial Command for the 3rd time. The words were clear, but he couldn't believe them. Sir? Commander Vex asked quietly. What are your orders? Krex crumpled the message in his fist. Imperial Command wants us to negotiate. They're actually considering the human proposals. The humans made proposals? General Thax asked, confused. 3 days ago, Krex replied bitterly. While we were trying to figure out how they survived, they sent detailed plans to every major government in the galaxy. Trade agreements, technology sharing, defensive alliances. They're offering to share what they learned on Telos 7, Commander. Vex pulled up the communications logs. Sir, look at this. In the past week, we've received diplomatic requests from 17 different star nations. They all want to establish relations with the humans on Telos 7. Krex felt a headache building behind his eyes. They're treating the humans like a legitimate government now. Because they are one, said Admiral Zork grimly. According to galactic law, any group that successfully colonizes and defends a world has the right to claim it. The humans have done both. Suddenly, every alarm on the bridge started blaring. The lights flickered and the ship shuddered. What's happening? Krex demanded. The orbital defense grid, shouted the sensor officer. It's powering down. On the main screen, they watched as the energy barrier around Talos 7 slowly faded away. The blue shimmer that had trapped ships for weeks simply disappeared. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. It's Captain Blake. Blake's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, they could see the bridge of the Defiant Star. But it looked different now, bigger, more advanced, with technology that seemed to blend human engineering with alien designs. Admiral Krex, Blake said with a friendly smile. Good morning. I hope you're having a pleasant day. What did you do? Krex demanded. We solved your trap, Blake replied. The orbital defense system is now under our complete control. We can raise or lower the barrier whenever we choose. We can also extend it to protect friendly ships or use it to target hostile ones. Krex felt his worst fears becoming reality. You're threatening us. Not at all, Blake said calmly. We're offering you choices. You can continue to be our enemy, in which case this system becomes a military fortress that blocks your expansion in this sector. Or you can accept our invitation to establish peaceful relations. What kind of relations? Asked Commander Vex. Blake's expression became serious. We've built something special here, Commander. 17 different species working together, sharing knowledge, solving problems. We've proven that cooperation works better than conquest. You're naive, Krex said. The galaxy doesn't work that way. It does here, Blake replied. We've created a society where strength comes from diversity, where problems are solved through innovation, not violence, and we're offering to share what we've learned. Admiral Zork leaned forward. What exactly are you offering? Technology, for starters, Blake said. We've developed new ways to process toxic environments, harvest energy from natural phenomena, and create materials stronger than anything in your databases. We're also offering defensive partnerships. Defensive partnerships? Krex asked suspiciously. The ancient technology we've discovered isn't just defensive, Blake explained. It's also incredibly advanced manufacturing equipment. We can build ships, weapons, and tools that surpass anything currently available. But we'll only share this technology with peaceful civilizations. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. The humans weren't just offering friendship. They were offering to become the galaxy's most advanced technological civilization. And if we refuse? Krex asked. Blake shrugged. Then you continue on your current path, but you do it without access to Talos 7, without our technology, and with the knowledge that there's now a power in this galaxy that can stop your expansion whenever necessary. Before Krex could respond, his communications officer interrupted. Sir, we're receiving messages from the Imperial Senate. They're ordering us to accept the human proposals. What? Krex spun around. The Senate has been in emergency session for 2 days, the officer continued. They've reviewed all the intelligence on Talos 7. They want immediate peace negotiations. Blake nodded. Your government is wise, Admiral. They understand that this situation has changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The old ways of expansion through conquest are ending. The new way is expansion through cooperation. Krex felt everything he had worked for slipping away. You're destroying our empire. No, Blake said gently. We're offering your empire a chance to evolve. Join us and your people will have access to technologies that will make life better for everyone. Continue as you are, and you'll find yourself increasingly isolated as other civilizations choose cooperation over conflict. Commander Vex stepped forward. Captain Blake, what guarantees do we have that you won't use this technology against us? The same guarantee we give everyone, Blake replied. We don't attack unless attacked. We don't conquer, we invite. We don't force. We offer choices. It's worked so far. Admiral Zork asked the question everyone was thinking. How do we know you're telling the truth? Blake smiled. Because you're going to see for yourself. We're inviting diplomatic missions from every major government to visit Telos 7. Come and see what we've built. Meet the people from different species working together. Judge for yourself whether this is something worth joining. Krex stared at the human captain. 3 weeks ago he had been certain of victory. Now he was looking at defeat, but a defeat that came with an invitation instead of destruction. What about our military forces? Krex asked. What about our expansion plans? Your military can focus on protecting your people instead of conquering others, Blake suggested. As for expansion, there are thousands of unclaimed worlds in the galaxy. We'll help you find and develop them peacefully. The communication officer approached Krex with another message. Sir, direct orders from the Emperor himself. We are to begin immediate peace negotiations. Krex read the message and sighed. The decision was out of his hands now. Very well, Captain Blake, he said formally. The Vorthan Empire accepts your invitation to negotiate. Blake's smile became genuine. Excellent. You can send your diplomatic team down whenever you're ready. Fair warning, though. The planet might seem different from what you expect. Different how? Vex asked. It's not a death world anymore. Blake replied. It's home. 2 hours later, Admiral Krex stood in the shuttle bay, watching as his diplomatic team prepared to descend to Telos 7. Commander Vex was leading the mission, along with scientists, engineers, and cultural specialists. Remember, Krex told them, you're going down to the most dangerous planet in known space. Vex nodded, but she was thinking about Captain Blake's words. The planet that had been designed to kill everything had somehow become a home for beings from across the galaxy. As the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Vex saw the truth with her own eyes. The toxic storms were being harvested for energy. The acid rains were being collected for industrial use. The deadly predators were living peacefully alongside alien settlers. The shuttle landed in the middle of a thriving city that hadn't existed a month ago. Vex stepped out and breathed air that should have killed her instantly, but the humans had somehow made even the atmosphere safe for visitors. Captain Blake was waiting for them with a diverse group of representatives from the 17 species, now living on Telos 7. Former enemies stood side by side, all of them working toward common goals. Welcome to Telos 7, Blake said warmly. Welcome to the future. As Vex looked around at the impossible city, at the cooperation between former enemies, at the technology that turned death into life, she realized that everything had changed. The humans hadn't just survived their trap. They had used it to build something that would reshape the galaxy, and they had done it all without firing a single shot.